Morning. Good afternoon. It's still morning in California, where I came from. A pleasure to have you here. I'm really excited to have some very eminent guests with us today. I'll introduce you in more detail later, but Bianca Jagger has flown in from London, and our colleagues Felipe and Rafael have flown in from Brazil for this event, so I'm very, very excited to have them here. I want to just set the stage initially for a few minutes, talk about this event, our panel, and discuss basically some of the learnings that I've had over the course of the last 2 years working the area of human rights, activism, change makers, et cetera, et cetera. So my assessment is that a lot of activists are usually very frustrated and very angry because they do a lot of very, very hard work and they don't always see immediate successes or any successes. So I'm here to actually bring some good news and some help. And the reason for that is that from the work that we are doing, we have seen some trends, we have identified some trends that may not be immediately obvious. So that's what I want to talk about very briefly, and then Bianca and Felipe will give you more details of the work that they're doing. But so we're an organization that works worldwide. We're a news platform, and we have established very deep contact with networks, activist networks, news networks, grassroots, bottom-up networks all around the world. And through that contact, we've had a lot of very deep insights into many phenomena worldwide that may not be hitting the headlines at the moment. And so the assessment is that we are very near. When I say very near, I'm speaking in civilization timeline to a brand new horizon. I know it sounds like a cliche, but I will try to explain why I believe that. A new horizon which will be very different than anything we are used to and anything we have seen before. So there is a few interesting trends that we have observed. So one of them is all the different ways in which our society is divided, and the debates that we have, the narratives that are established, and the way we divide ourselves. And there's always a new way in which we can divide ourselves as a society. So there is an East versus West divide. There's left-wing versus right-wing. I assume most of you would consider yourselves left-wingers, right? Liberals, conservatives, different political parties, countries, nations themselves are a cause of division. Races are a cause of division. It's very easy to differentiate, to divide people by race because it's something very visible, it's very obvious. And it elicits a lot of emotions. Religion, again, is a very obvious way to divide people. But, so the reality actually that we have come to conclude is that all of these are just distractions. None of these divides are actually real, they're manufactured. So the real divide that we believe is between the empowered or the entitled or the powerful and the disenfranchised. And this is the claim I'm making, is that this is a divide that is universal. It's not by country or by race or by religion. Actually, it's a universal divide. And that's the only divide that actually matters. That's a real divide. And that's a divide that needs to be overcome. So what are we doing about it? And what can be done about it? So what is happening is the second category, the disenfranchised, the unempowered, they are now beginning to come together for the first time. Well, they've always been coming together, but I would say they're coming together like never before, in a very new way, facilitated by technology and the internet. So that's really the new thing, the key new thing that is happening, that is going to change our world in the coming years. And this is becoming a global movement. So if you noticed the headlines over the last few years, The Brazilian riots, which started with the bus fare situation, started in the same year as the Occupy movement in the US, riots in Turkey, the Arab Spring. All of them happened within a course of 2-3 years. So there is something happening which is global and which represents the disenfranchised, the unempowered, to actually coming to a state of realization that all the games that have been played on the global stage have nothing to do with them. It's a game being played between different empowered people. And now they're saying, actually, it's not about you guys. It's not about left or right. It's not about different political parties. It's about us. So that is a very new thing, and I hear that all the time in different countries, within different communities. And that's really beginning to break down the artificial barriers and focus on the thing that is important. And it's about self-empowerment. That is the single most important word I can use today. It's self-empowerment, right? So the empowered and the entitled actually have absolutely no incentive to empower the unempowered. The only way there is going to be change is when the unempowered assume power. And the only way they will do that is by self-empowering, right? And that is actually happening in a big way all around the world. And the next important thing is that, so you have these people unempowered who are now empowering themselves. And they have already started organizing themselves into different groups and networks. And all these networks are spread around the world in different communities based on different themes. So it could be, for example, a political movement in Brazil, or it could be a social movement, an LGBT movement in Asia, in Hong Kong, or it could be a socio-political movement in Egypt, et cetera, et cetera. So they're all networks based on a certain location or a certain theme. And the new thing that is happening that we observe by being, again, in touch with all these communities is that they're all now beginning to coalesce. They're beginning to come together. They're beginning to learn from each other. They're beginning to be inspired by each other. So this is taking on an exponential form. And so this is the key point, is that independent networks who are actually very busy developing their own following, their own users, their own influence, are now beginning to work with each other around the world, right? Because the barriers across the world have been broken down by the internet, by cheap flights. People can fly easily, get to meet each other, look each other in the eye and say, hey, what are you doing? And how can we help each other? Also by new collaborative consumption concepts like Airbnb and staying in each other's, sleeping on each other's couches around the world, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very grassroots, but it's very powerful at the same time. And so this is the prediction, right? It's a bold one, but the prediction is that in the coming years, the collective power of the unempowered will overcome the unique power of the empowered. And that's what's going to create a new society. And where do we fit into this? Why am I talking about this? So we established a news network all around, a global news platform called Proximity. And one of the things we are doing is we are becoming a network of networks, which is again a very new thing. So we are beginning to connect existing networks that I was talking about earlier. So some examples, there are many more examples, but some of them are a Sudanese independent journalist network, a Media Ninja, a grassroots activist organization in Brazil, which you're going to hear from in a second. Global Voices, I'm sure most of you are familiar with Global Voices. They're a frequent speaker in this event. Drik News is a Bangladeshi grassroots organization. Video Volunteers makes videos about neglected communities in India. Brave New Films is a Hollywood producer, and they make films about basically injustices happening in America. For example, the prison industrial complex, et cetera, et cetera. So all these are now coming together on one network. And the power of this network is basically going to surpass previous or existing power structures. So that's our assessment. And because of that, we believe that the world in the coming years will be very different from the world that we have ever seen before, or we can probably even imagine. Because most of us tend to extrapolate the past into the future, and we believe that the world will be incrementally better. But actually, we believe there's going to be a point of inflection, a tipping point, beyond which you will see a very, very different world, a world that is much more just, much more equal, and much more fair. So I know it sounds like a dream, but I believe that if we stick with everything that we are doing, all of us, then that dream is not too far away. So with that, I will introduce you to Bianca Jagger. Bianca has been involved for many decades, 2-3 decades, in the fight for human rights. So I'll just read you her bio. So Bianca Jagger is the founder and chair of Bianca Jagger Human Rights Foundation, Council of Europe Goodwill Ambassador, and member of the Executive Directors Leadership Council of Amnesty International USA. She's a prominent international human rights, social justice, and climate change advocate. For over 3 decades, she has been a voice for the most vulnerable members of society, campaigning for human rights, civil liberties, peace, social justice, and environmental protection throughout the world. She is the recipient of numerous prestigious international awards for her human rights and humanitarian work, including, in 2004, the Right Livelihood Award, also known as the Alternative Nobel Prize. 97, Amnesty International USA Media Spotlight Award for Leadership. 94, the United Nations Earth Day International Award. 2006, the World Citizenship Award from the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. 2004, World Achievement Award by Mikhail Gorbachev. 97, the Green Globe Award from the Rainbow Alliance, etc., etc. So you get the idea. She has 3 doctorates, honoris causa, the doctorate in law from the University of East London in 2010, a doctorate of human rights from Simmons College, Boston in 2008, and a doctorate of humanities from Stonehill College, Massachusetts in 1983. And we're really, really honored and proud for her to join us today. So I'll hand it over to Bianca.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Sanjay, for that kind introduction. Please, can you do me a favor? There are some empty seats in the front, and I would love to see you rather than to have you so far away. So if you could come closer to me. It is very exciting to see you and to see so many people from all walks of life willing to live by Gandhi's word to be the change you wish to see in the world. And, you know, I have lived by that principle because I believe that individuals can make a difference. And I know that this conference is so special because you, the people here, believe that we can make a difference. And we can. And we must realize that no matter how powerful the special interests, corporations, and governments who do not want to do what is necessary to save our planet, they will listen to if we are together, cohesive, and if we understand that we have the power to make a difference in the world. And so, contrary to some celebrities, some people who say to you, don't vote, I will say to you, please be engaged, please vote, please make sure that it is one of us that is elected to office, that it is one of us that is elected to rule the world and to rule your countries. The world today stands on the caps of various tipping points, environmental, economic, nuclear. We are going to need every one of you to make a difference. For those of you who don't know me, and I hope that a lot of you understand English, and I know that Germans are good at speaking other languages, contrary to many other countries. I have campaigned for over 30 years for human rights, social justice and environmental protection. I was made Council of Europe for the abolition of the death penalty in 2003, and I was honored to receive the Right Livelihood Award, otherwise known as the Alternative Nobel Prize in 2004, and with the prize money, I founded the Bianca Jagger Human Rights Foundation, BJHRF, in 2005, to be a force for change and a voice for the most vulnerable members of society. I am in great pain, so I hope that I will be able to convey my message to you. But I thought it was really important that I come to Berlin, a city that I love, to speak to all of you. I would like to tell you a little about myself, because it is not good for you to see people that come and give speeches and you don't know anything about them and what has motivated them. Because often people ask me, well, why? What makes you change? What makes you the person that you are? And some people think that perhaps I changed the day I divorced my ex-husband. But I wanted to let them know that no, I didn't change the day I divorced. I was born in Nicaragua. I was born under an oppressive government, and that is what made me change. When I was 10 years old, my parents divorced, and my mother found herself single, without a profession, with 3 small children to care for. I watched her being discriminated because of her gender and status. This painful experience inspired me to commit myself to speaking up for women's rights. During those years, I believed that I could have made a difference because of what my mother taught me. As a teenager, I felt powerless when I learned of the terror inflicted by Somoza's National Guard in Nicaragua, and all I could do was participate in demonstrations against the government's brutality. Early in my life, I made a decision to seek an education that would protect me from enduring my mother's fate. I was determined not to be treated and regarded as a second-class citizen because of my gender or my status. I never wanted to feel powerless in the face of discrimination, of atrocities committed by powerful oppressors. And that is why I have such a hope when I see all of you here together, when I know that young people, and not only young people, are determined to see a change in the world. With my mother's support, I left Nicaragua with a scholarship from the French government to study political science. There have been various epiphanies in my life. Perhaps the most important one was when I was visiting a refugee camp in Honduras, when the death squads crossed the border, entered the refugee camp, and entered to abduct the refugees to take them back to be killed in El Salvador. And I was a member of a US congressional delegation, and the 5 of us plus the relief workers, the mothers and the daughters and the families of the people that have been abducted, we decided to follow the death squads, which were about 30 people. And they were wearing bandanas and military equipment and sophisticated radio, and AK-47. So we decided to follow them along a riverbed. And at one point, they turn around and they say to themselves, and we could almost hear that this son of a bitch are catching up with us. And for unbeknown reasons, perhaps because they thought that they will have to kill us all, and that we were screaming in Spanish that they will have to kill us all, but that they couldn't get away with it, that they turn around and they left and go. Well, I want to tell you that that was for me a turning point, to know that because some people were there, some people perhaps that they thought were American, I am not, I'm British and Nicaraguan, because they thought that perhaps they will have to kill too many, that they decided to relieve the refugees. And that was the beginning of my life as a human rights defender. And I came back to the US to testify about what I have seen in Central America, and to warn Americans that there was the regionalization of the war, and that was just before the Contra war in Nicaragua. My foundation has various campaigns, and the most important campaign at the moment that we have declared is to end violence against women and girls, and to call on to world leaders to include ending violence against women and girls in the Millennium Development Goals. Would you believe that in 2000, when they met, world leaders forgot to include ending violence against women and girls? I don't know if you have been following what is happening in Nigeria. It made my blood boil. I couldn't sleep last night when I saw that 3 weeks later, the president of Nigeria has finally spoken about the 270-something girls that were abducted. That until today, we don't know if they are doing anything to be able to recover those girls. And I know we can make a difference. And when we talk about making a difference, what is really inspiring for me is to see that women today are really determined to end violence against women and girls. There are 60 million girls on the way to school that are sexually assaulted. And so I call on Mrs. Merkel to be the leader that will call on other leaders to include ending violence against women and girls on the post-Millennium Development Goals in 2015. It is really important. It is crucial. And I know that they can do it. They can do it, and they must do it. So one of the things that I would like you to be able to do is please to use the hashtag ending violence against women and girls in 2015 and to focus yourself on what is happening today in Nigeria. The BJHRF has another campaign, which is we're calling for a reform of our model of development, a model of development that includes respect for human rights, good governance, and respect for the environment. What we have throughout the world are companies that, on the name of progress and development, have been destroying our environment. And one of the works that I have been doing is supporting indigenous peoples throughout the world. And perhaps if we can talk about successful campaign, is the campaign that we launched in India together with Amnesty International and ActionAid, because I believe that we can do more and we can be more effective when we work together. I believe that if we work with grassroots organizations, if we work with you people throughout the world, if we organizations, instead of working one against each other, we work together, we can make a difference. And it is what we did in support of the Kon people in Orissa, India. And the Kon people won in the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court decided that they could say whether they wanted this big mining company called Vedanta, which is an English company from India, that wanted to mine bauxite in the beautiful mountain that they believed that it was sacred. What is it what I did? Well, I wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of India, Manmohan Singh at the time. I wrote a letter to the Chief Minister of Orissa, who I knew before he became the Chief Minister. I put that on Twitter. I put it on Facebook. I got people to Twitter about it and to make a noise about it. I went there. I went to see, and I went with ActionAid, and I worked together with Amnesty International and attended the annual shareholders meeting. It is so important for us to be at shareholders meeting. It is so important for us to buy one share so that we can go in. It is so important for us to have our voices heard among them. It is, perhaps you will say, it is easy for you, Bianca, to be able to be shoulder to shoulder with these people. Well, I'm not shoulder to shoulders with them, but I want them to hear my voice. I want companies like Chevron, who destroy the environment and really endanger the life of people in Ecuador, to know that we will hold them accountable, that we will not forget what they're doing, that we will demand that they be held accountable in a court of law. And the other campaign of the Bianca Jagger Human Rights Foundation that we are working on is to establish crimes against present and future generations, so that we can not only hold accountable companies, but that we can hold accountable CEO and the management for the decisions that they made, for irreparable damage to the environment, for grave human rights crimes. You know, if you follow me on Twitter at Bianca Jagger, you will see that every day I try to give a voice to those who have no voice. I try to hold accountable companies. I try to give you all the information that you need about Monsanto, because I believe that we must defeat a company like Monsanto, because I believe that we must move away from fossil fuels and embrace renewable energy, that we must move away from nuclear power. I believe that we can achieve all of that. I really believe that we can make a difference, because our planet is at stake, and we have the capacity and we have the power to be able to make a difference in the world. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you, and I hope that I will see you on Twitter. Take care.
Is it working? Yeah. Thank you, Bianca. As always, extremely inspiring. I've heard her other speeches. They're all on YouTube, and every time I hear her speak, I get even more excited and inspired. Our next next and last panelist is Felipe Altenfelder. He is flown in from Brazil. He's the founder and chief editor of Media Ninja. It's an organization that either you've already heard of, and if you haven't, you will soon. And you should. Ninja stands in English, it won't translate very well for the acronym, but it stands for Independent Narratives, Journalism and Action. In Portuguese, it does work. In English, it doesn't. And it's a Brazilian free media collective with 2,000 collaborators and more than 200 collectives connecting Brazil and Latin America. And he's also responsible for organization of an off-access circuit, which runs more than 150 independent festivals in Brazil. And the thing that strikes me personally most about Felipe and their 2,000 collaborators is that they actually live their dream. They live in collectives, and their full-time, 24/7 occupation is to create deep social change in Brazilian society. So I'm again very honored to have Felipe here.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm calling Rafael too. He works with us on this, and he will be moving something while we talk. Well, first of all, it's very special to us to be here. We thank to the Republic organization, to Sanjay, not just for invite us to be here, but to is building a new platform with us. And the idea to be here talking about human rights, and I think that the best way that I can collaborate, it's just sharing our experience, things that we lived in Brazil, in a reality where we had to transform a lot of difficulties into opportunities. And the Media Ninja as an initiative is not something that came from an idea, is not some like few guys brainstorming and saying, whoa, let's create an independent channel. It's something that we just have because of a process, of a historical process already. And our first step, initially at 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when in Brazil we had the collapse of the music industry, and there was no underground scenario being structured before. So the opportunity that we had in this situation is to propose a new practical model to give a new life to one of the most valuable things of the Brazilian culture, which is our music. So we just realized that we could change the old model, that it works basically with commercial recording companies paying to commercial radios to revelate very few artists per year, and we could change it into a very grassroots and potent experience, connecting independent festivals all over Brazil. We started all this thing in a kind of a very favorable environment. We had Lula's government starting since 2002. We have Gilberto Gil as Ministry of Culture. So it was a very good time to start to work collectively and to start to connect networks all over Brazil. So we kind of grew very fast. We started connecting 5 collectives, and after 5 years we were talking more than 200 cities. We started making 5 independent festivals, and very fast we were talking about a platform with 150 events. This works like 5,000 gigs per year. It's about 30,000 independent arts using this new map that we built with lots of people. In 2011, we just felt that our concept, the off-axis thing, it was something that we started connecting cities far away from São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. And then we just felt that we were already in a good point to move to São Paulo and start to shake the things from one of the main cities of Brazil. And once we went to São Paulo, some very interesting things happened. I will tell to you 2 of those things. The first one is that to build this festivals network, we always had to do our own media. The thing that we thought since the beginning, it's okay, the traditional Brazilian media system will take a long time to understand what we are, and once they understand it, they will not like it a lot because something doing to break the way that they work. So we just created our own media platform since the beginning. And once we moved to São Paulo, we start to get closer to more traditional social movements. And we started to apply our independent media tool, not just to promote an underground music scene, but to give visibility to lots of different social fights and social issues. So we get together with the environmental movements, doing campaigns about some laws that were being voted. We get together with the movement that is proposing a new drugs policy to Brazil. We get together with the movement which is fighting against homophobic crimes and this kind of thing. We get together with groups that were working with urban mobility questions, and we start to hang out with these people and get our media system as a more activist media system. And another thing that happened, that we started to be like interviewed by lots of journalists. We live in a collective house with 30 people, and lots of journalists went there to see, oh, how are you guys? How do you work? And once they had the experience to be some time with us, they liked that, and we started to talk together, and we get a very interesting conclusion. We saw that we were living in the communication industry in Brazil a very similar kind of crisis that we could observe 5 years ago in the music industry. So we just got the perfect scene to put together people that came from a cultural circuit with journalists, with activists, to start a new media system. And that's where Media Ninja came from. We just released a Facebook page. We traveled to Tunisia last year to the World Social Forum. It was our first coverage. It was good to be there. Tunisia is the place where it started the whole global spring thing. And the World Social Forum, it's a very important event for the Brazilian movements. So we just get back to our beginning to start. We came back to Brazil. We went to the deep part of the country, covering some environmental fights. And then suddenly, in June of the last year, it just started a very big wave of protests. Actually starts with people fighting against the raise of the bus fare, but police did a very brutal repression, and this repression generated a big wave of commotion, and huge crowds of like 1 million people, 60, 100,000 people, 700,000 people start to went to the streets to protest, not just for the bus fare, but for human rights, for the democratization of the media system, for a new drug policy, for politics that thinks better, the utilization of the public space, and whatever. In this moment, our traditional media was just unprepared to deal with the situation. So they were like filming the thing from a helicopter and speeching from a studio miles away from the protests. And we just get our mobiles, our cameras, we went very into it and did a real-time coverage. So when people get back to their homes, they was watching the massive media, they were being criminalized, they were being called vandals, and when they went to our page, they saw like strong images, they were feeling much represented, and this made us grow very fast in terms of visibility and credibility. I have time yet? Okay. It was a night during the Confederations Cup. It was a Coca-Cola panel on Paulista Avenue, São Paulo downtown. And after a protest, a group of anarchists, they just went to destroy this panel. And in this moment, there was no media vehicle there doing any kind of live coverage. And we were live streaming it with a mobile. And suddenly, thousands of people started to watch this transmission. In the end of the night, we have been reached 180,000 people. This in the Brazilian system to measure TV audience is the same than 2 points. And there's lots of TV channels that have to spend lots of money to get a point and a half. So it totally shake the communication debate. It was that mobile, like it's a broken iPhone with 40 reais prepaid plan, and we got the same audience than lots of TV channels. We shake the debate of communication. And it was interesting because then the media started to treat us like a team. In the morning after that night, our mailbox just woke up with lots of interview requests. Oh, we want to talk to you guys, see what's this new thing. In this moment, we got two options. We could have a more radical posture and say, okay, no, we are not talking to massive media. We don't believe you. We're going to keep on our way and we're going to build our credibility on this sense. But we have another option, that it would be to accept this dialogue and understand that it would be our best opportunity to go a step ahead on a classical challenge of the free media movement, which is to talk to more people than for the ones that already follow the political debate, to talk to the not organized people. So we just accept this challenge. We went to lots of media exposition, and then we had a second boom, and we started to talk with massive audience since very cheap platforms. Once they are cheap and once the technologies are very simple, we could also share our technical knowledge, our statistical knowledge, and we help to inspire a very big network as lots of collectives. This image here, it's a mining data study. It was produced in one of the main tough weeks of protests in Brazil. All those names here, they are independent media collectives. So when they are connected, talking about the same team on the networks, we are able to reach even bigger audience and to try to face in an equal to equal challenge with the traditional massive media system in Brazil, which is a very conservative media system, and we need to break it day by day. So after we realized this bigger movement, we started to be very incisive in very important public questions. So we are giving more visibility to social fights like of the indigenous people or like the things that are happening in Rio de Janeiro now. We are very close to the World Cup, and there is a pacification policy going on. They are sending lots of militaries and armies to the favelas to have the people calm to the World Cup. So there's lots of violence going on. The country is living lots of contradictions, and we are involved and giving visibility to these issues. The moment that we're living now, it's a very intense year. Doing a football metaphor, it's a year with two halves. We have the World Cup in the first half. We got the elections in the second one. And what we believe in this moment is a moment where the activists and the movements we need to be very creative. We need to be very smart, because if we go to try to march again during the World Cup, we're gonna be repressed by the army that's doing the security on the city now, and we'll have the public opinion against us, because everybody wants to see the football matches. So the matter is, how can we be pacifically, how can we give a party characteristic to the movement? So what we are planning to the World Cup is to be doing a kind of occupation in a very big square downtown in Rio de Janeiro, where we'll be connecting activists of lots of different social movements. And it's a moment where the whole world will be looking to Brazil, and we just know that it's the proper time to send messages, to get this concept that we built of narratives, and to show the world prototypes of new possible words, using what we call social technologies. Is when you recognize that the popular knowledge produced outside of the university, it's also science, if you systematize it and if you share it. So we can learn about a lot with Brazil in this moment, about being creative, about being solidarity. This image is very good image. It's a street cleaners strike, and they just stopped their work during the carnival in Rio this year. It's a moment where you got 1 million tourists in the town. So the garbage just started to go all over. And in the beginning, the mayor went to Globo, the biggest TV channel, and he just said, okay, this is strike cleaners. They are not all the workers. It's just a minor group who is forcing this strike. And we just get again the mobiles, the cameras, we went into it, and we just showed that no, that it was workers, that they had a very fair reivindication, and after 1 week of strike, they succeed and got a very significant raise. But that was what I was saying before to close, is that we have a very special moment in Brazil. We have a very intense environment of collectives, of networks, with lots of experience to share. And we are here in a very special moment to us, announcing this new platform that we are building together with Oximity. It will be medianinja.oximity.com, and it's put things in a much better perspective once you will be able to check already translated the content being produced for all our collaborators in Brazil. Well, we are here more days. Will be lots of time to change ideas. We're going to open now for some questions, and thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Felipe. Again, very, very inspiring. Two very different approaches to achieve the same objectives as we've heard today. How many of you are going to the World Cup in Brazil this year? Nobody? Well, you can watch it all on Oximity. You will see the alternate version, the one that, the real version of what's happening in Brazil, which is what Felipe and his organization will be talking about and portraying, versus the official version, the shiny, clean, happy version that you will hear from mainstream news media. Bianca wanted to talk about her work and her observations about Brazil, so please go ahead.
It's better for me to stand up, less pain. Many people have a very glossy image of what's happened in Brazil. But I wanted to tell you that in Brazil, under the government of President Dilma Rousseff, she has a project to build 40 dams in the Amazon. Currently, they are building the monstrous project of Belo Monte. The Belo Monte Dam will be, if it's ever built, will be the third largest dam in the world. I wrote an article for the Huffington Post about the Belo Monte Dam being an environmental crime. Now, the Belo Monte Dam is causing tremendous harm to many indigenous tribes inside Brazil. Very little is known about them, even though there is a huge campaign going on against the Belo Monte Dam. Many people don't understand that, of course, in Brazil, they could have renewable energy. They have the sun, the wind, and every opportunity to be able to have renewable energy to substitute down and to substitute fossil fuels. So if you ever can, please support the campaign of the indigenous people against Belo Monte. But I wanted to talk to you as well about, because I didn't have time to say, that I was born in Nicaragua, and currently Daniel Ortega, which is no longer the great Daniel Ortega that many of us supported when we supported the Sandinista revolution. Daniel Ortega has changed the constitution 3 times, and now he can be elected president for life. He has another monstrous plan to build a canal in Nicaragua, a canal that will destroy our natural resources, that will cost billions of dollars, and he's doing that with a Chinese partner. And that will destroy not only the 2 Great Lakes that Nicaragua has, but it will destroy rainforests. So there you have 2 countries. Brazil, a very powerful country that doesn't understand a president that doesn't understand the value of the rainforest, which is not only a value for Brazilians, but is a value for the entire world, and who is going to cause a tremendous damage to the cultures of indigenous tribes that depend on the Xingu, the river Xingu. So I urge you to please go to the articles of Bianca Jagger in the Huffington Post, in the American Huffington Post, where I write about all of these issues. But let's when we leave this conference, let's not just go and have left another conference. Let's think how we positively can make a difference, how we can positively stay together, and how we can positively make a difference in the world. How can we influence our government? In fact, I must say, I admire the Germans, because it was your resilience, it was your commitment to demand from your government that you didn't want nuclear power, that the government changed its view. We can, and we have not been able to do that in the UK. We have a president that promotes not only nuclear power, but to promote fracking. And so fracking will cause us tremendous amount of damage throughout Europe and the US and many other countries. So if anything I can say is, let's stand together against fossil fuels, against major dams like the Belo Monte, against fracking, and against everything that is destroying our planet, and against Monsanto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bianca. It's very clear the passion that our panelists have for the work they're doing. We have about 5 minutes left. I would like to ask the audience if you have any questions for any of us. While you're thinking about your question, I would like to ask a question to both of you, a challenging question. So beyond all the passion, beyond all the great work you're doing, can you share real success stories that you have been through and define it and explain it? First, what the problem was, what you did, and what was a successful result, all in 1 minute each.
For us, it was it is a step-by-step of making difficulties into opportunities. In the beginning, there was no independent scene to independent bands to play. We started to organize festivals. There was no people knowing about it. We did the visibility to that. Then we need money to finance all of that. We create an alternative currency based on systematizing of work. And we moved to São Paulo, and the thing just blew, as I told you. It was fast.
Talk about, for example, the recent rulings on net neutrality that you were involved in.
That's a very good topic, and I think there's a field of interest here. There's a law that it was approved in Brazil 2 weeks ago. It's the Markussi of Internet. It's like the first package of laws about Internet, and we get guaranteed 3 vital points. It's net neutrality, net privacy, and freedom of speech. And this law, it was a conqueror of the civil society. The document, it was wrote collaboratively for 400 people in a website. We put it into the Congress. It was 4 years. We did to pressure a lot, do a strong campaign, the social networks, and Snowden helped us a lot because when he went to Brazilian television telling about that Dilma was being spied, the thing just got more visibility. So we thank him and us to do that.
Bianca, would you like to share any success stories?
Well, it's more than a success story. During the 90s, I went to Bosnia, and I was asked to evacuate 2 children, Sabina and Mohammed. Mohammed was suffering from a blue baby syndrome, which means he was born with a hole in the heart, and he was 8 years of age. And Sabina was suffering from leukemia. I was asked to evacuate them, but of course the international community didn't want to allow refugees to come, running to Europe and to the US and open the floodgates. So I had to evacuate these 2 children together, and it was a half successful story. Mohammed was able to come back with me to the US and to have an operation, and he was saved, even though it was a very difficult thing to do. And Sabina, unfortunately, we waited so long, and the United Nations High Commission and the UNPROFOR, the protection forces, didn't want to allow us to use the airport in Tuzla. And by the time Sabina and Mohammed and we got to Split, Sabina had a brain hemorrhage. But if they had provided us with a helicopter, she would have had an 80% chance of survival. And it is so many children throughout the world who are dying in wars, who we do not want to help, that the international community has a responsibility to the children that are dying today in Syria, that has a responsibility to the people of Rohingya in Burma, and our total indifference to that. Yes, there was a success story, but there is so much more than we, the international community and governments, can do to stop the killing of innocent children. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, if there are no more questions, I would like to finish here. Sounds like there aren't any, so I would like to finish here. Thank you very much for coming and attending, listening to us patiently. And good luck for the rest of the conference. We'll be here most of the 3 days, and would love to talk to all of you. Thanks a lot.